What happens at reauth? So I know this is going to require some discussion. I'm going to tag this over to the team because I'm running out of wind, folks. I'm running out of wind. Who wants to take over reauthorization?
I can take over reauthorization.
All right. Thanks, Brenda. Sonia.
So what's new with reauthorization? Reauthorization letters are sent 60 days before the family's reauthorization ends by email or mail, whatever the family's preferred method is. So that's a change. Family access administrators must reach out to the family as second outreach. So if you mail or email the reauthorization letter, you need to follow up the second outreach by telephone call or text, or email if you sent the first one out by mail. And if the family doesn't respond to reauthorization notice, a notice of denial will be issued at least 14 days before the expiration. More information on that will be coming soon. So we're going to circle back to that. Proof of residency, it's only required if there's a change. So you're only going to get proof of residency at authorization. You do not need to get it at reauthorization unless the family has moved. If a family fails to reauthorize or care ends during an authorization, the family has 60 days to reauthorize or reinstate their placement. Foster children now are included if under sibling continuity. So if there's a foster child in the home where the family has care for their biological child, the foster child will be able to get sibling continuity as well. Graduate school is a service need only at reauthorization, and if previously the service need was education. Any questions on what's new?
There is a question in the chat. I think Carmen may have answered.
Right, yeah.
She answered it, but we'll say it out loud. So can an employment letter only be used at initial for 12 months and a reauthorization, right?
So if they use the employment letter at authorization and they get a 12-month authorization, at reauthorization, they're going to need to supply pay stubs. They can't keep reusing employment letter.
Brenda, there's another question. So a foster kid is included as a sibling in enrollment order? Question mark.
Carmen, you want to help me out with that? I would say no, because a foster child doesn't have a fee.
I don't know that I fully understand that question myself. So a foster kid is included as a sibling in an enrollment order. What does that mean?
So I think what they're talking about, so if there's a child and then the foster child, the foster child's younger, would they have like the first child fee, but there's no fee for a foster child?
Yeah, there's no fee for a foster child. Yeah. Are we misunderstanding the question?
Yeah, I think it might be about
always counted as a family of one though?
No, no longer.
Okay.
So there one of the things, and Cindy, you can come off mute if you'd like, but a foster child is included as part of the household, right? But let's say that the foster child is the youngest child in the home. You would not say, okay, that's child number 1, and then the biological children would be child 2 and 3 in terms of enrollment order. So they are included as part of the household, but not as part of the enrollment order.
And so they're part of the family size.
They're included as part of the family size, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Tyrese, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the bullet close to the bottom, there was some confusion about that. Are we talking about a foster parent who has their own children and they have a foster child who's in child care, that the foster parents' biological children or children within that household that are not the foster child also get sibling access?
Correct. That's what that means. Absolutely. I'm pausing because I want to see if there are any questions. Did folks hear Bethany's explanation? So Cindy asked, now I don't see Cindy's question.
Yeah,
what did you say about foster kids? So the bullet around foster children, it says foster children in home with a child in care qualifies for sibling continuity. We may need to rephrase this. So a foster child may be in home, that biological child, that foster parent has biological children. Because there's a foster child placed in that home, that foster parent's biological children would be eligible for assistance would be eligible for assistance as a sibling to that foster child.
And what happens if the foster child is removed?
The families already has access. They wouldn't lose their access.
Okay.
Right. Right. Once you have access to childcare financial assistance, the family would have to do something to lose it. Right.
Just to clarify, when we have a foster child under income eligible, and then we have a family that with the foster parent with her bio children as well, there's two separate family IDs, because you cannot put two IEs in one family file. I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly. We can't have two IEs in one FID.
I don't know what you're. So when you speak
to a foster. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Because you're saying you see it as two different households. You see the foster parent with the foster child with the foster parent. That's one household, and then her household with her own children.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
She's a guardian to that foster child, which gives us the zero parent fee, and then she has a separate household with her children and the foster child. So there's considered two family IDs. Is that correct?
Two family IDs.
That's correct.
That's for entering. That's for entering it. Yes. Right, Carmen?
Yes, that's for CCFA. Because
she's going to have a parent fee for her own children.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's why the two different household IDs.
Yes. Thank you.
So functionally, a foster parent who has biological children on the wait list who does not have funding for the biological children gains custody of a foster child who does have funding off of and is enrolled. That parent can now go to a CCR&R and get sibling access for her biological children because a foster child in their custody now has funding. Is that correct? Because in the past,
Correct.
I don't think that was the case.
It was not. Yeah, that's why it's new. Yep, you're absolutely right.
And I would just add to that, just being careful. Well, because we're saying bio children, but children who that foster parent
children,
has who are dependent, right? So
families look different.
Yeah, families look different, but that's exactly what it is, Leslie. That this is something new and great for foster parents.
Yeah. Because sometimes what happens is they're newly foster parents, and then now they have there are different needs for their household, and they have it for the foster child and not their own children.
Is the answer the same if the funding for the foster child is a DCF authorization and the children in the household aren't eligible for DCF authorization?
That's correct. It's an access point. Yeah.
Okay, so they'll get income eligible.
Yeah, they're not eligible for DTA, DCF. Yeah. How does this work for a grandparent with custody? Reauthorization, or are you just saying eligibility? Because grandparents with custody.
Eligibility.
Oh, we're going back to eligibility. So a grandparent with custody, they would go through the regular eligibility process. How old is the grandparent?
I've had like 55-year-old
Yeah.
grandparents who've called that are not on the 211 yet, but I've told them to go on, put their names on it. I've actually put their names on there for them. They are working and they just need childcare because they've just gotten custody of their grandchildren.
So they have priority status. So we had immediate priority in general, they would fall under priority.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. There is also, it's the same. If a grandparent is a guardian, that makes them exempt from a parent fee, correct? Yes. How is this imported into CCFA while authorizing? I do not see any activity options, anything that would match us. That question, I would say you would have to send it in. I can't direct you on how you would enter something into CCFA on this training. So my apologies. There is another question. We have a family where the father is in the reserves and in medical school. They previously did not qualify for a subsidy, but with this new information regarding graduate school, does this mean they now do qualify? Was dad's previous, did dad previously have education as a service need?
Yeah, so they did have a subsidy, but then they just didn't qualify for whatever reason. But like I said, he's still in medical school and he's in the reserves.
Yeah. So, but in the when he had the subsidy, was education his part of the service need, the service activity? And we can you can send that one specifically in. But it looks like he has reserves and he's in medical school. Is mom working?
Yeah, she's a teacher.
Okay. Yeah, I would send it in if you have any like additional questions, but it's as the medical school would be considered graduate school, but at reauthorization, you could add it if dad was in school previously. It sounds like he was, but I don't, for time purposes, I'm not, I can't, we need to look at that one. Did I miss any questions, Bethany? So Carmen, can you answer this question? If it's a grandparent and they're over the 85%, does the family still qualify because they are guardians? And current
Grandparents don't come in at, we don't consider their income.
We don't consider their income yet. I just wasn't sure. So that's why I was asking the question of you. Yeah.
I started that myself.
Yeah. So Evelyn, if they're over, they just need to, if the grandparent is over income, their income is not countable.
Yeah.
Their income's not countable. You're welcome. Turning it back over to you, Brenda.
Okay, so the reauthorization overview. So the Family Access Administrator is responsible for working with the family, and that's the key word, working with the family. You want to be able to work with the family to make sure they understand all the documentation they're going to need at reauthorization. Also, you're not collecting as much information at reauthorization. You're not recollecting foundational docs, ID, citizenship, proof of address, unless it changed from authorization. So you're going to reach out 60 days before recertification. Family's going to submit their updated application. You're going to review the documents. Then you are going to determine eligibility, and then childcare is reauthorized. Anything on the overview?
Next slide.
So preparing a family for reauthorization. Again, educate the family. Let them know what they're going to need to bring in, so that way they can have all the documentation submitted ahead of time before their appointment. Or if they're missing something, they can bring it in at their appointment. We never want to tell a family, you know, they sent everything in, but you're missing something, and now the next time they have an appointment is 2 weeks later. It's not what we want to do. We want to make sure that the family is prepared. So if you speak to them and you're telling them what the documentation is they're going to need, follow up, send them a list. Send a list to the family, let them know what they're going to need to send ahead of time, or something they're going to need to bring into their appointment. If there's any forms or the application that needs to be completed, you can send that out ahead of time as well. You're going to work with the parent to make sure that they submit their income. You verify their service need. Family composition, you only need to do that if there's new documentation, if you're adding a new household member. In residency, again, if it's a change, and that's according to, if there's a change from if they move from authorization. Anything on preparing the family? And continuity of care. Does everyone know what continuity of care means? What defines continuity of care? We're going to put this question out and see if anyone knows the answer.
Quiet. We need no wrong answer. What's continuity of care?
The
Continue
child is already
security.
receiving service.
Staying in the same place regardless of the contract. Children aging out of our programs. What else?
The child is already receiving services.
Yeah. How do you explain it to a family? How do you define it for a family?
Continuing with the
Parenthood.
care.
Yeah. Continuing with the care, moving. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, so keeping a family in childcare. So we want families to know that care can continue. So when they're aging out, when they're in preschool and they're going to kindergarten, we want them to know that care can continue, that they can get before and after school care, after school, vacations. Same thing if they're moving. If they're moving different programs, care can continue. If they're going from a contracted provider and they no longer, they age out of the contracted provider, now they need a voucher. They need to go down to the CCRNR so they can get that voucher. So we want parents to be aware of all their options when they're aging up. Same thing when a child turns 13, they can stay in their slot, or 16 if there's a disability, until the authorization ends. So we're not going to end care just because they age out because they turn 13. Children in a priority population slots, DTA, DCF, young parents, homeless. When that ends, they're able to come over continuity of care. They can go over into an income eligible. If they don't have a service need at the time, we're going to put them on a provisional to give them time to get a service need, seeking an approved activity. So we want to keep the kids in care. We want to keep the families in care. And we want to work with the families to make that happen.
And somebody asked me a very important question that I think that we want to clarify for everybody. So I know we didn't get into forms and documentation. We're not saying that that's not required. So they wanted to know at reauthorization, are all the EEC forms filled out again?
Can you repeat that, Bethany? I'm sorry.
The question was, the parent doesn't need to fill out all EEC forms for reauthorization?
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing for a second if I can find the stop sharing. Somebody else might have to do it for me. Oh, there we go. So I can see folks. What we've been highlighting is what's new, right? Those other things are still there. Like in like practice, much of what you do like with the system is still the same. Reauthorization, families will still need to complete they're still going to have to let you know if something changed. They're going to have to complete the form, what if anything's changed. All of that's the same. Collecting the information to determine and redetermine eligibility, all that's still the same. We're not removing those requirements. We still have to ensure that families that they meet the eligibility requirements, right? We have to do that reauthorization. If something changes and a family's reporting the change, we still need to see the documentation that proves that there was a change, right? If a family is adding a child, you still need documentation to add that child, right? You'll still need to do that. They've changed their service need. You'll still need to collect the documentation as it relates to that as well. I know we're changing a lot of, we're making some shifts in our policies, but they're always, in most cases, you're still going to have to, we're still requiring documentation as it relates to eligibility and moving the families through the family journey. Sorry, was someone saying something? All right. We're at 3:12. I'm going to give folks a break in another 15 minutes. Sorry. Are you guys able to see my screen again?
Yes, we can see it. Looks good.
All right. Any other questions around continuity of care? All right. Policy variances. What is a policy variance? Anyone, what's a policy variance?
An approved exception to the policy.
Yeah, approved exception to a policy. To what policy, Haley? Is it specific policies? What is it?
Any of the EC financial policies. So whatever is in the policy guide, if there's a, I guess, a reason to request it, then we fill out a variance to ask EEC if we could, for one reason or another, I don't know, have to abide by it or some sort of change to what that policy is.
Absolutely, thank you. So yeah, policy of variance is a family's ability to ask EEC to make an exception to one of our policies or our procedures, right? Families can do that even for the wait list, right? They can do that for the wait list. What your responsibility as the family access administrator is just to let the families know that it exists, right? Let them know, right? There's this option of a policy variance, and when do we use it? Here, there are 3 types of policy variances. Everyone knows what you use it for. It's an exception, just like Haley said. You need an exception, tell EEC your situation, right? You request it, and then EEC reviews it, and we let the families know if it's approved or denied. You have extraordinary circumstances, extenuating circumstances, and unforeseen, events or natural disasters, right? I like to say almost anything can be an extenuating circumstance, right? So help the families, educate and help the families wherever you can. In completing the variances. The way variances are currently reviewed, they're sent into the EEC subsidy management mailbox. The financial assistance team that you met today, they do the initial review, and then there's a final review completed by Bethany or myself before the family's informed of the approval or the denial. Did I miss anything here, team? All right. Denials and terminations. I'm going to turn it over to the team to take it from here.
So for denials and terminations, we have made some changes to the notice of denial. We have added the non-approved break in care, the exceeding income or asset limits, or insufficient documentation of eligibility. What we have removed from the notice is failure to meet financial eligibility, abandonment of subsidy, excessive absences, failure to submit required documentation, and did not follow this EEC subsidy administrator or provider policy. Notice of denial may be extended with continuation of care. So meaning if a parent is not in care and there was a notice of denial issue and they file a request for review, we cannot extend that parent. However, if the parent had an authorization and was in care and was issued a denial, then we can extend the care while EEC reviews the request for review. Also, we did a change for the intentional action by family. So substantiated fraud must be intentional. Again, I want to repeat that. Substantiated fraud must be intentional.
Well, how the heck they gonna know if it's intentional, Brenda? How will they know?
How would you guys tell if a parent has committed substantiated fraud?
When they provide you pay stubs that were not given to them by their employer.
Ooh.
By purposely withholding information. If a client alters or purposefully changes any documents that they turn over to us?
Yeah, you just said alters, right? They're altering. documents.
Purposely
Yeah.
giving you pay stubs that doesn't show extra hours that they worked, like deliberately giving you the ones with the less hours in pay.
So guess
No.
what? They can do that.
Yes.
Guess what, Jen? They can do that, right? So for pay stubs, the family can give you any 4 weeks of pay stubs over the last 26 weeks. That's most representative of what their income is, right? They don't have to include pay stubs that have extra hours, overtime, or bonuses on them, right? It's like what's most reflective of their income. So they can actually do that. But all the other examples are right on. They're right on.
I've got a good one. Buying a house with their child's father and not reporting that he's living there.
Say that again.
By
Oh, wait, you went on mute. You went on mute.
by buying a house with their child's father and not reporting that he's living there.
How you know?
I got a good one though. I had a parent that owned a business and gave us pay stubs as he paid himself.
As an input.
What?
So dad owns a business, right?
And he wrote pay stubs for him and his wife.
Well, he might.
Minimum wage.
So as a new business owner,
Could be a corporation, could be taking a salary.
he could be
No,
taking
no, it wasn't a new business.
Yeah, so if you're not, if you have a business, right? And I'm not saying this is what it is. What I want us to be is for us to, it needs to be intentional, right? And really, it must be intentional. It can, all kinds of things happen when you're your own business. And I'll be honest, my husband has a catering business. I work in his catering business. He definitely needs to give me a salary. He definitely needs to give me a salary, and it probably is less than minimum wage. He's not paying me, guys. He's not paying me, right? He's not paying me for being his delivery driver. He's not paying me for being his business manager. He's not paying me enough. So sometimes you don't pay yourself as much in your own business as you're paying your other employees. I'm not saying that's what it is, but we have to also be objective and when we're reviewing our family's information. Danny, I see your hand as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This side, I want to say that sometimes the parent don't provide all the documentation that is required. For example, when they are owners of a business, sometimes they don't provide the full package of taxes form and transcript, and we can figure it out when we read all the documents.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's like leaving out pieces of information that actually belong, right, with the rest of the income information. Yeah. So you guys got it, right? That's exactly what it is. Brenda, I'm giving it back to you.
Okay. I think Joanna wanted to add on to this as well. Joanna?
Well, I was going to say, when in doubt, if you ever have questions, feel free to send that to the EEC Subsidy Management at mass.gov. I mean, we rather that you seek any guidance from us. If you're hesitating, rather than give a denial or a termination that can be easily fixed if you ask the proper questions and you guide the parent properly. And I'll
add, it's important to keep to have a good for you to keep to sustain your relationship with the family, right? Doesn't mean that you don't report it. You should still report it and allow EEC to do the investigating and to decide whether it raises to a BSI referral, right? You want to maintain your relationship with the family. Right. But you should still report it.
And following on what Tyrese is saying, that it's important for you to have a relationship with the family. It goes to the next bullet, how we work with the families. So the family access administrator must review the information on the denial or termination with the family. Most of the times, when I get a request for review and I contact the parent tells me, well, I received this notice of denial or termination and I don't understand why. So my follow-up question to them is, has your family access administrator explained to you the reason? Most of the time, some parents may say that, but we take what the parent says on face value. Also, the family access administrator must counsel and support the family. Find out, ask the question, why, what happened, before you issue the parent the notice. Maybe find out if there's any other program that the family may qualify for, right? And then also too, the family access administrator will need to explain the request for review process. When we get a request for review, the first thing that the parent says is, I sent them my request for review. We do have 60 days to process it. Most of the time we don't get to those 60 days because our team, we do a lot. And so when it comes down to us issuing a decision, it may take longer. So the parents don't know how long it takes for us to issue a decision. So they're constantly, sending us emails like, oh, well, my family access administrator told me to contact you guys and this is taking too long and it's been more than X amount of time. So just please educate the family that it is a process. We want to do our best to issue a decision quickly, but things happen. Next slide.
And Brenda, just to add while we're transitioning to the next slide, just one of the things around how you work with the family, there's a lot of cases that come before this review team where a family wasn't properly counseled. Sometimes like losing childcare becomes a crisis for them, and they weren't informed about provisional, for example, that your school shut down and now you don't have a service need anymore. So instead of, putting together a fake school letter, for example, they were never told that there's actually provisional, that while you're seeking an activity, you could do this. So when families are informed on the front end about all of the service needs, the options available, we think we'll see a decrease in the needs for requests for reviews.
Thank you, Bethany. So reasons for the denials and terminations. So on the left-hand side, you're going to see what the denials are now. So one of them is the lack of service need. The second one is going to be exceeding income or asset limits, outstanding unpaid parent fee balance, insufficient documentation of eligibility, substantiated fraud, disqualification pursuant, non-approved breaking care, and residency outside of the Commonwealth. Joanna, did you want to take over terminations?
Sure. So the reasons for terminations are lack of service need, income exceeding 85% of the state median income, substantiated fraud, non-approved breaking care, residency outside of the Commonwealth, and an intentional program violation. Any questions on that?
Yeah, there's some questions in the chat. Somebody, I'm just looking for the name. So Pat said, should we always trust and believe what the family gives us? Is this a new normal, correct? And Pat, I'm not sure if you want to unmute yourself to ask a specific question.
I'm just curious if that's the new normal. If they say they don't have a family of 4, but they do, you just go along with that.
Okay, thank you. So we're not saying, we know that there's going to be situations that come to your attention that are like that example that you said, we're not saying not to send those things forward. We want you to send those things forward. There may be families who are, committing acts of fraud, and we do process those families through the BSI referrals, that process with that. So we're not saying it's always turn a blind eye, but I think it's coming to the family for where they are all the way in the beginning. And this is really, at initial and reauthorization that these denials, these notices are either sent to families or you're identifying this information. We're wanting to make sure on the front end that we're asking the questions, letting them know what they're what they might be eligible for, and then allowing them to report to us what we need. But if you're seeing major discrepancies in that, like that example that you gave, that is something that you're going to issue this notice, and EEC will uphold decisions that are, if a family did a fraudulent activity. So that is not going to be changing. It's just how we work with the families. And I'm not sure, team, if there's anything to add to that piece, or Tyrese as well.
Well, I want to say this though, right? There are instances, you guys give good examples. If someone's altering their pay stub, they alter their pay stub, right? The example of the family, they bought a house together and they're not together. I don't know that I would say issue a notice. I say you should let EEC know that there's fraud there, that you believe there's fraud. What we don't want you to do is feel that you have to police a family or that you have to become the investigator. Right. Key to a substantiated fraud or an intentional program violation is like the intent, like intentionally doing it. They may, right? But when you're altering a pay stub or you submit some piece of documentation and then you see that the attachment wasn't included, right? And then you receive that attachment later, that's a lot different from a family situation. There are families who own homes together and live separated, and they're actually not together and they live in the same household. And so I also want to recognize that family dynamics change because people change. Relationships can be difficult. Co-parenting looks different from family to family. And there are families who may live in the same household, but actually are separate. And so I don't want any of you to feel like you have to be the investigator. You can report it, right? You can report it. And when it's questionable, we're saying report it. There are going to be instances where you have the documentation and it is whited out and copied over. But when in doubt, as Joanna said, just send it over to EEC and allow us to be the bad guys. We want you to be able to sustain a healthy relationship with the families you work with.
Definitely.
So if parents are not married but live together and mom leaves dad off the paperwork and says he's not involved, do we report this? How do you know if dad lives with mom? How do you know that the mom has left the father off the paperwork and that they claim to be a single parent? How do you know that? If you're believing what the family is putting in front of you, if the family completes paperwork, how do you know, Leanne?
They come in together, drop off with that mom.
They come and drop the child off together. How does that mean they live together?
Well, she's pregnant with her third child, so I would assume that they are living together.
You sound really far away. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
He said she's pregnant with her third.
Pregnant with her.
Well, there you go. Better. Go ahead.
She's pregnant with her third child. And
correct.
And she is receiving assistance in what? It's a new father? I don't understand. So what I don't want to go back and forth on the situations, but if I'm going to reiterate this. Mom's pregnant with her third child. She completes an application and she says that father does not live in her household. You're going to believe it. If you believe she's committing fraud, you should report it. Say, I suspect fraud. I suspect that the father lives in the home. Mom did not put that on her application. And then EEC will do the investigation, decide whether it goes to BSI as a referral. Does that make sense? So we're not asking people to turn a blind eye, but we are also asking you to recognize that families look different and we can't make assumptions based off of what we see. I don't know whose hand was, I can't tell whose hand was up first. And I want to be able to give you guys a break. So I'll take the next two questions and then we'll go on a 10-minute break. Who was first? Was it Marlene? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just want to say that we are here to help families in need. So I think we have to start looking for what is wrong. So I think our services, if people really has money, they don't go to us, they don't go to this system to look for daycare to do for us. That's what I think. So we are here to help the families, and I think we have to stop seeing us as a police. We are not a police, we are here to serve. That's what I think, and be empathic and have good relationship with the families.
Yeah, thank you. We are here to serve families. Most families are not committing fraud. We know that there is fraud, but most families are not committing fraud. And I will say that as someone has worked in multiple state agencies that administer public benefits. Most families, our system historically by design has forced families to present differently and to lie. Right. And most families that are low income or poor, they really need the assistance, right? And that's why that's why many people end up lying, because they need the little bit, right? And oftentimes it's everything is added together, and when you're receiving all the public benefits sometimes added together, then you lose one of them. You lose one of them. Margaret, thank you, Marlene, for saying that. Thank you. Margaret?
I just wanted to say that sooner or later, one of the children is going to tell you exactly what's going on in that household anyhow, so you just have to wait a little while, so.
Thank you. Yes, the other thing is the truth always comes out.
And usually with a child.
Yeah, the truth usually always comes out. But if you question, we're not telling you not to report it. We're saying you believe what's in front of you and allow us to do the investigations. We have a process. We have a process for you to report fraud, and we have a process to refer it for it to have further investigation. Right? Yes. So those were the two questions. We're going to take a 10-minute break and come back at 3:45. Are we ready? Can you guys see my screen? That, of course, I can't fully see.
It's looking great on our end.
Yes.
All right. Before I hand it back over to the team, I just want to call something out on reasons for denials and terminations. For denials for families who have outstanding unpaid parent fee balances, I just want to call out that parents are only responsible for 3 weeks of outstanding payments. Only 3 weeks. So we want to make sure that providers understand that. So if they have, if a parent fees, we heard a provider yesterday share that, they have there's a family who has outstanding fees of $3,000. I was like, either those are private pay fees or those are fees that extend 3 weeks. So it's important to make sure that you call it out. And families, if they have an outstanding unpaid parent fee balance, they just need to come into a payment agreement for you to be able to assist them otherwise. All right, Joanna or Brenda.
So I know
you're on mute, Joanna, if you were talking. It looked like Joanna was trying to talk. She was on mute. Sorry.
Sorry. So continuing with notice of denial or termination of financial assistance, a family may be issued a notice of denial when they are initially applying for childcare financial assistance or at reauthorization. So what this means is that a family should only be issued a notice of denial at the beginning when they first apply. For example, if they're over income, they should not be issued a notice of denial during a 12-month authorization. A family may be issued a notice of termination within an authorization period or at reauthorization. All families have the right to request a request for review. We ask that all family access administrators make sure that when you issue a notice of denial or when you issue a notice of termination, you always give a parent the request for review form. Any questions?
Do all of you send out a notice of denial and a request for review with it, with the notice of denial or termination? Yes, no, use your chat, come off mute. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah. All right.
So the request for review process, the family access administrator issues a notice to the family. Then the parent fills out the request for review form. And if parents are having trouble filling out the form, some of them may not understand if they speak another language or so. This form is going to be available in different languages. But if the parent is having trouble, just please help the family fill out this form so that they can fill it out properly. Then review of the decision to deny or terminate financial assistance, meaning please review with the family. Let them know why they are being denied or terminated. Once it comes to us and we review it, then a decision will be issued. During the review process, the family may continue their childcare financial assistance. So usually if it's a termination, the terminations, we are extending along with the denials. So the family will have care extended during a period of time.
And this, of course, means that, so a family has the right to say that they don't want to continue. That's absolutely up to them. But when they submit the request for review, if they want care to continue, we will review it, and then we will let the family access administrator know if we are going to extend care while in review. Any questions? Everybody is tired by now. If we don't have any questions, we can continue to the next slide. So the appeal process. A family that is issued a request for review and the decision does not go in their favor has the right to request a hearing. A request for hearing must be submitted written to the EEC General Counsel within 14 days of the written decision from EEC. So once EEC submits a decision to the parent, we also let the family access administrator know. If you can please guide the parents and let them know that if the decision did not go in their favor, they absolutely have a right to request for a hearing. The family will be informed of the right to have special accommodations made for the hearing process. We do appointments via Zoom, and we also do appointments in person in their local EEC office area. Parents must complete the request for hearing form that was included with the upheld decision, and the informal hearing will be held within 60 days of EEC's receipt of the request for hearing. Any questions? All right.
Joanne, I'm sorry. You did have some questions, but Tyrese, it's up to you if you want to, do we want to save them until we're done? Because I know we're towards the end.
Are they related? I would say take maybe a couple.
Okay, there is one around, we have to send a term notice after 1 week to be able to collect 3 weeks because of the 2-week notice. That came up. And Tina, I'm not sure if you want to clarify that a little, or if team, I'm not sure. Do we understand what she's
I'm
asking?
not sure I understand the question.
Do you mind coming off the mute to answer that? I mean, to ask the question.
Hi, that's me. Sorry, I came off mute. I feel like parents are 1 week late and we're only allowed to collect 3 weeks. So if we give them a 2-week term notice, we have to give them a term notice just for being 1 week late. And I just don't feel like that's fair to families, because most families will call me and explain to me why they're late. But, you know, I just don't feel like that's fair to families. That's where I'm coming from.
So what we're saying is, like, your process for collecting, your policy for collecting the parent fees, as a provider, you get to decide. What we're saying to you is that we 3 weeks is the amount of parent fees that parents will be responsible for paying that are receiving childcare financial assistance. So you could still send out your notice in 2 weeks, but you would only be able to collect the 3 weeks of you would be terminating for the 3 weeks of unpaid fees.
Right. So if they don't pay, if I give them a couple extra weeks and they don't pay, we lose that money because we can only collect 3 weeks.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's not new. The 3 weeks isn't new, from my understanding.
No, it's
Anyone
not.
from the team? Yeah, it's not new.
No, it's not new.
Yeah.
And Tina,
This
do you
doesn't
guys
seem like
give them? I'm
gives
sorry.
us- It just doesn't feel like I give the families enough time to recoup if something happened in their families, and they have extra bills to pay and stuff. That's all. But that's okay.
Deposit as well. So there was an extra week of, at
Right.
least in policy, right? There was an extra week of money in there. So it's like you had that 1 week already of payment plus those, so you maybe only lost 1 week versus now if you don't have, if the program doesn't collect a deposit
You're gonna lose 4 weeks.
and
Yeah.
you're not allowed to collect, right? You can't, yeah.
And
Do
Tina,
private
does-
pay families pay a deposit?
I have families pay a deposit, not now because the policy has changed.
Do
So if they pay
private pay families pay a deposit? Do
private
private
fee
pay
families, absolutely, yes.
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 Okay.
So before it used to be 4 weeks on the latest policy guide, and then when the last policy advisory came up, somebody asked if the 4 weeks was still in place, and the answer was yes until these meetings started. So it used to be 4 weeks.
Was it the 4 weeks with the initial deposit?
It was just you couldn't collect more than 4 weeks of outstanding parent fees. Now it's changing to 3. And when was that effective?
So today, right?
Okay.
As you're going through the trainings, right? We said that this is going to be a phased approach, right? There's going to be a phased approach. The changes that we're making are changes that are good for families, right? They're good for families.
But parents still have the option to pay like a whole month at a time, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
If that's what a parent chooses, we don't decide, we're not deciding that for a parent.
Thank you.
So there's other questions. I'm not sure I understand this other question. So just to be clear, parents should be getting non-payment letters if they are 1 week past due on their parent fees. So as a program, you decide what your parent fee process is. What EEC is saying that what we are saying, and I'll go back to the slide, right? Parents are only responsible for 3 weeks of outstanding payments. We are not telling you when to send out your letters. We don't make that decision. Programs are responsible for developing their own policies around the collection of parent fees.
And Tyrese, if I can piggyback on that. So when I was in the field,
Sure.
what we would do as a contracted provider is every Friday, my fees were due for the upcoming week. So like Terry said, every program makes their own parent fee policies. The way a parent pays, of course, you can't make a parent pay their whole bill. It's what the parent can do, but you can make your own policies within your program. So what you want to keep in mind is you don't want to wait until a parent owes you 2 weeks to issue a 2-week notice of termination, because now they're going to owe you 4 weeks because you waited 2 weeks and you let that build up. So you want to create your own policy. We, for example, like I said, we used to always bill every Friday for the upcoming week. So whatever works for you, you know your parents best. Whatever works for you, but you can't let those fees climb up and then issue a 2-week notice of termination and have a $1,000 bill. I think we're getting more questions on the chat.
Yeah, so we're gonna move forward and we'll come back to those questions towards the end.